there's been a lot of numbers that have been thrown around, but we can guarantee you that whatever number we hit on Tuesday is going to be stunning. It's going to be, and it's something that we all can be proud of. This has been a fantastic effort. One of the people that we should recognize for helping to drive this thing, amongst the many who were there, who helped out, is Martha Pincus over there. Despite what the other side is saying, this has been one heck of an effort. We've been doing it totally with volunteers, no big money. We've done this all ourselves, and especially proud of the effort here on the North Shore, organizing our own recall headquarters up on Green Tree. How many volunteers do you think we got through, Martha? A couple of hundred at least? Yeah, a couple of hundred volunteers. You know, the thing of it is, if Scott Walker isn't worried, he better be worried, huh? Most importantly, the thing that's really neat is I understand a lot of those signatures have been coming down from the rural areas. So it looks like Scott Walker is the type of politician who does something to upset everybody. So I think we're you know, we're not gonna rest easy on this. We're gonna have a long, you know, we've gone through this phase. We're gonna have a long, hard election ahead of us. But this is something I know we can do. I know you're all ready for it. And so we're going to be ready to take back the state of Wisconsin, huh? The great thing about this state is that we have so many really fantastic progressives, so many people who have stepped up. But I got to say that here in Wisconsin, we've had a number of women here who have stepped up and who've been active and have really framed the character of the state. You think back to the turn of the century, Robert La Follette, his wife Bella Case La Follette was very active. Let's move it up to Milwaukee. Who's one of the grand dames of Milwaukee politics? Val Phillips out there. You know, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day. She was instrumental in terms of fighting for equal rights, being one of the first elected black women to serve statewide. And here in this district, we've been particularly blessed by having great representation with Sandy Cash. We didn't quite get the result that we wanted in the last election for sure, but one thing that I can tell you is Sandy is a fantastic leader. She's got great ideas. She knows the way things work in the real world, especially in the area of healthcare. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that Sandy's going to have a great career going forward in Wisconsin politics. So Sandy's going to come up and she's going to introduce our featured guest, Tammy Baldwin.
I love these soapboxes, though. That's really cool. I want to thank you all for coming, and Keith, he has been just such a champion for making sure that the progressives of North Shore have a forum to get together, that we are not alone in our houses. You know, when I was knocking on doors in Mequon, I would go to a house and people would say, well, I'm a Democrat, but I'm the only one on the block. And then I would do 2 houses down and say, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm the only one on the block. And I think that's what Whitefish Bay and Shorewood might have been, Fox Point, but all those people just 2 houses away from each other because of Keith got together. Now we have a strong voice, and it's been an incredible movement on the North Shore. The passion that's been involved in this recall, the passion that I felt and the help I got from everyone in my race. And now I know that we're going to put that passion and that effort into making sure that Tammy Baldwin is our next United States Senator from Wisconsin. About this wonderful woman. You know, Keith talked about the strong, intelligent women in Wisconsin politics, and Tammy is the strong, intelligent woman in Wisconsin. She has been such a fighter for all things that matter to us. She has been a fighter for families and a fighter for the middle class and women's rights and equality and the environment. all of the issues that we care deeply and passionately about. She has been first the voice in the state of Wisconsin, in the Capitol, but then she took that and went to Washington and has continued to be a smart, independent voice. She is someone who voted against the Iraq War, one of the few strong people who did the right thing and didn't bow to this incredible pressure to do the wrong thing. So, I mean, we have so much to be thankful for Tammy.
In the National Defense Appropriation Act.
Yes, yes. I mean, there's so many things that she has been the independent, intelligent voice on for Wisconsin. And we need that now. This is a seat that has been held by a Democrat since the 1950s, since Joe McCarthy was booted out. And we had William Proxmire and then Herb Kohl, and we need to have Tammy Baldwin. We need to have Wisconsin balanced, because if we look at our other senator, I mean, he got an A+ from the Koch brothers. An A+ from the Koch brothers. This isn't a champion for Wisconsin, that's a champion for special interests, for the top 1% special interests. And that is not what we need, it is not what we want. So I am so honored and so proud to introduce Tammy Baldwin to you, who is going to be the next senator from Wisconsin.
I'll make it easy for you. Thank you so much, Sandy, for that lovely introduction. And Keith, thank you so much for convening us and moving the time that we were being convened for a special something that's happening a little later this afternoon. You know, I'm very mindful with what we've been talking about since I arrived of the unique times that we find ourselves in here in the state of Wisconsin and certainly across the United States right now. But I want to tell you that I am extraordinarily proud not only to be an American, but to be a Wisconsinite. And it has a lot to do with our history, and in a moment I'll tell you a little bit more where that pride comes from in terms of what's happening now. But our history is so impressive. We are responsible for so many firsts in this country. You were talking about Bob La Follette. I think of the leadership that he showed that led to such incredible progress and populism that sort of emerged from our state. But I just think of, just in the arenas of education, civil rights, and workers' rights, we have so much to be proud of here. Civil rights, our state was the first to ratify the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote. We beat out Illinois just by minutes, but we did win that competition. In 1982, we were the first state to pass a law banning discrimination in the workplace against gays and lesbians. 7 years before the next state. You know, I was thinking one that I haven't mentioned before, but because we are meeting on the eve of the day that we celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., our state had the first official recognition ceremony for Martin Luther King's birthday of any state in the country. Another thing we can be proud of here. In education, we were the first state to write, not the first state, among the very first states to write a guarantee to a free public education for all of our children into our founding document, into our state constitution. And not too far from where we stand today, Wisconsin had the very first kindergarten in the country. Yes, that's, you know, and I think we now know almost by heart, just because of what's happened in our state in the past year, all of our firsts with regard to protecting workers and advancing a worker's voice in the workplace. We invented the concept of workers' compensation and enacted into law before any other state in the country. We invented the very concept of unemployment insurance and were the first state to enact a law providing for unemployment insurance benefits in the case of dislocation. And we all now know very well that we were the first state to grant collective bargaining rights to public employees in 1959. And I might add just something I learned today, but it's so fitting on today. We won the first Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
The first one. Anyways.
We're the union team.
We're the union team.
Yeah.
Yay. And a publicly owned team.
Yeah.
A lot to be proud of here in the state. And then we had these 2010 midterm elections. And you know, we lost Russ Feingold as our US Senator. And we got a Tea Party legislature in Madison and a Tea Party House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. We've seen what Scott Walker has wrought on our state. And I think about the devastation we've seen with regard to public education funding in Wisconsin in the year since he took office, all to pay for these tax giveaways to corporations in our state that he enacted in his first few days in public office. I think about, well, the workers' rights battles that we've been talking about so much. And then voters' rights, my goodness. The enfranchisement of tens of thousands of citizens in the state of Wisconsin is threatened right now because of this cynical voter identification law. And this ridiculous redistricting scheme is clearly aimed at keeping Tea Party majorities in both houses of the state legislature for years and years to come. And we were pioneers in terms of access to the ballot box. So this is a huge step backwards. But you know, I said earlier that I was proud of Wisconsin's history. I want you to know I have never been prouder of Wisconsin than I have in this past year, because nobody in our state took all of this sitting down or quietly. You know, at first, when we learned in February of this cynical agenda, we came to legislative hearings and signed up and said, I want to be heard. And when they shut down those hearings and said, it's over, people said, well, wait, we haven't been heard yet. And we started rallying and demonstrating and exercising our First Amendment rights. And when they didn't listen to that, we took the next step and took action at the ballot box. And Sandy, thank you so much for being one to stand up. We are so grateful. And so I had the opportunity, you know, Herb Kohl said in May of last year that he was going to retire at the end of this term, the end of this year. And I was still exploring, you know, whether I should get in this Senate race or not. And so I did what I call my recall road trip, where I traveled to all 9 of these races across the state of Wisconsin and spent some time with Sandy. We did doors together, and you know, and at clear at the other end of the state, walking doors with Shelley Moore up in northwestern Wisconsin, and all of the districts in between. And it gave me the opportunity to show up around the state and listen. And I don't think anyone here will be surprised to know that people are struggling almost everywhere in our state. And people kind of open up, you know, sometimes when you knock on the door and start telling you what's going on in their lives. So, you know, I talk to moms and dads who aren't able to put away anything for their children's college education, although their parents were able to put them through college, and they're sitting there daily worrying that they won't be able to help the next generation do better than they did. And I talked to a single dad who was telling me about today he's working 2 jobs, but he earns less cumulatively with those 2 jobs than he did when he only had 1 full-time job. And of course, as a single parent, that means he's not able to spend as much time with his children. And I talked to folks who should be, you know, weeks or maybe months away from their retirement age. They don't know when they're going to be able to stop working, because on a routine basis, they have to dip into what should be their retirement savings just to pay bills, keep current with the mortgage, and keep up to date. And all of those folks are the lucky ones because they still have jobs. And we know there's so many in Wisconsin who have lost jobs, and especially the long-term unemployed right now are facing discrimination in some ways. There's a lot of employers that won't take applications from people who've been out of work more than 3 or 6 months. Well, what a predicament that is. So people are hurting. I think about, again, the Walker legacy already here. As a member of the House of Representatives, I routinely sign congratulatory notes to people who have given to their communities and are retiring. So a lot tough times to teachers who are ending their career. This last year, I think I had an inch stack of notes to teachers. Dear Mrs. Jones, thank you so much for your 38 years of service to this district. Dear Mr. Smith, thank you for your 27 years of service to this. And I started adding up just the years. We have lost centuries of classroom experience due to retirements that Scott Walker drove. And that harms the children of our state, and it harms the young teachers who need mentors with experience in their classrooms and in their school buildings. It is painful to hear at the doors what people are going through right now. But the second thing that I heard throughout the state, universally, was a frustration, in fact, a furor at the disconnect between what they were telling me about their lives and their struggles and the debates that we're having in Madison, Wisconsin and Washington, D.C. They cannot believe how disconnected those public servants are from their reality and their lives, and they are furious about it, and I'm furious about it, and I know you are too, because they want somebody who gets it. They want someone who is going to go and fight for them, not for Wall Street, not for the military-industrial complex, not for Big Pharma, but for them. And that's what I've done throughout my career in public service, and that is why I'm running for United States Senate. I want to share just a personal story where one of those passions originated. Some of you don't know that I was raised by my grandparents. My mother had me when she was just a teenager, and she was unable to raise me. And so, you know, my grandparents were there, and I'm very, very lucky, and my grandmother was like my rock as I was a child. But when I was 9 years old, I had a very serious childhood illness that put me in the hospital for 3 months. And then I had quite a bit of aftercare before I was completely better. My grandfather had insurance. But the fine print of the insurance said it covers dependents. You call it a family policy, but family policies cover dependents. And dependents are children and spouses, not granddaughters. And it turned out that my grandparents had to pay for my hospitalization and my aftercare out of their pockets. And then I was a child with a pre-existing health condition. Never mind that I was completely better. You know, it's the number crunchers at the insurance companies who say what a pre-existing, so if you've had a hospitalization, they consider you at greater risk to be sick again in the future. Whether it's true or not, that's what they do. And so I had no insurance until I was an adult. And it was that experience that made me want to fight every day to have a system here by which every American had access to the highest quality health care the affordable health care, and completely accessible health care. Yeah. And it's why I've been unafraid to stand up to those big, powerful interests in the course of all of these debates we've had. Now, we know how much maligned the healthcare debate was, but today, parents who have children with a pre-existing condition can rest assured that they won't be discriminated against in insurance coverage. And I was so proud during the debate in committee to offer the amendment that allows young people to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26 years old. You know, that single amendment is responsible for 2.5 million young people having coverage today who didn't 2 years ago when that bill first passed. And it's an extraordinarily important piece of policy. But as Sandy mentioned, I was also one of the early ones to stand up to George W. Bush and say, no, we should not be going to war in Iraq. It is a war without a viable exit strategy. And I was so pleased to see our brave men and women come back from Iraq in time for the holidays this past year. But we have another job to do, because it is now time to bring our brave men and women back from Afghanistan also. I had the chance to travel there in August of 2010, and you would be so proud of our servicemen and women. But they have already long ago achieved the mission that Congress authorized. And they are now doing very different things. The mission is very unclear. It is time to bring those brave men and women home too. I think in my first term in Congress that I kind of made Wall Street pretty unhappy with me. Now I wear it like a badge of courage, but at the time, Russ Feingold and I stood with just a handful of our colleagues when we voted no against repealing the Glass-Steagall regulations. Now, people, it's like, Glass-Steagall, what the heck is that? But this was an important regulation that was imposed after the Great Depression, after people had lost their life savings in the stock market crash. And what it did was it put up a wall or a barrier between commercial banks and investment banks and said, no, you cannot take gambles with people's life savings. I don't know why so many of my colleagues voted to abandon that common sense regulation, but I feel so strongly that had we kept it in place, we could have well averted or certainly lessened the financial catastrophe that our country found ourselves in just a few short years ago. Fighting against tough and powerful interests certainly gets you labels and gets you names, and when those attack ads start flying, you're going to hear them call me names and give me labels. But really what this is about is fighting, and fighting on the side of our fellow Wisconsinites and standing up to the powerful interests that keep hold way too much sway both in Washington and in Madison. There is a lot that needs to be done moving forward. I don't want to talk a lot about policy, but I think it's important for us to note that in addition to the individual stories that I heard last summer as I was traveling the state, there's a lot of data to back up what people are telling me at the doors. In Wisconsin, the middle class is shrinking. In the United States, the middle class is shrinking. The middle class, the backbone of America. Census data suggests in Wisconsin that median income in our state has declined 14.5% over the last decade. And that suggests to all of us also that it's not just about this huge recession we're beginning to get through, only beginning to get through, but that where we find ourselves today is the result of perhaps decades of poor economic policies. Policies that have eroded our manufacturing base. Policies that have led to significant inequities in our society. And we have to go and fight. We're in a global marketplace now, but not all countries are playing by the rules. And even if we look at our domestic marketplace, it seems like there's two sets of rules. People who are working hard every day, playing by the rules, and not getting ahead anymore, they're falling behind. That is not the way it should be in Wisconsin. It's not the way it should be in America, and we've got to fight back. So just a little bit about the Senate race. Because we're going to be in campaign mode all 2012, right? We're ready. We have February elections, we have April elections, we'll have summer elections, August elections, and November elections. I feel so privileged that right now it appears that the Democratic, that we have a unified Democratic front as I run for this seat, and that is incredibly, it's an incredible advantage that we have to seize full opportunity of. Meanwhile, there are actually technically there's 5 Republicans who have registered, but 4 that we talk about a lot, and rumors that there'll be more entries into the Republican field for U.S. Senate shortly. And they are in quite the food fight. You've observed, Keith, right? And I have to just chuckle every time I see them fighting with each other because, you know, to me they all sound the same. They've all patted Scott Walker on the back and said, "Go guy," and they've all said, you know, of Paul Ryan, "We support your budget and your cynical plan to end Medicare as we know it for future generations." You know, they are racing headlong to the right, and anyhow, but they're in quite the fight with one another, and it's an opportunity for us just to continue organizing and unifying and building. Public polling taken in November of last year says that this U.S. Senate race is a dead heat. Yeah. And that is an extraordinary place to be a year out from voting. I was leading Jeff Fitzgerald by 3 points. I was leading Mark Newman by 1 point, and I was trailing Tommy Thompson by 2 points in that poll, all within the margin of error of this statewide poll. So this is an extraordinary place to be with so much time still yet to grow. But I have been traveling the state, introducing myself to voters across this great state. It is very exciting, and it is very exciting to have so many folks here today from the grassroots North Shore who are this early on in the process coming to participate. You have wowed me with all you've done on the recalls, particularly most recently with your signature collection and your volunteer base and your energy and your excitement. I have no doubt that working together, we are going to win. So thank you so much for your support and for being here.
Anyone have some questions for the Congresswoman?
How about the Givic mine?
Pardon?
What is your position on the Givic mine, strip mine in northern Wisconsin?
Great question. The bill that was written by the prospective mine owner is absolutely unacceptable. The previous bill written by the prospective mine owner is completely unacceptable, but the fact that they spent, what, a year, better part of a year, doing nothing different than to write the rules for a corporation is unacceptable. And I had the opportunity, this last week, I was traveling in northeastern and north central Wisconsin. The closest I got to the site of the mine was Wausau. but the day that I was there was the day they had the hearing up in Hurley. And people attended an event that I was at in Wausau, having come directly from that hearing, and it was heartbreaking to hear about, again, we are so proud of our open processes in the state of Wisconsin and how that wasn't happening at this particular legislative hearing, and how people were, as I understood, shut down and shut off in terms of their testimony, and that's just not the way we should conduct business in Wisconsin. So I understand, and again, this is following it in the news, that the Assembly plans on rushing this pretty quickly. I think, Sandy, am I correct that it got postponed till, not this week, but the following week? We hope that the Senate will take a slower course with this and really get input from people and discard the work product of the Republicans in the Assembly. No one actually will take credit for this bill in terms of, they just said, you know, we won't say who, they say they won't take ownership of who actually wrote it, but in any event, you know, it needs to start over. I have spotlights in my, so I can see arms, but I can't see faces right now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I do a lot of canvassing, and one thing I hear over and over again is people are tired of Democrats who don't stand up for themselves. When the Republican spearmint gets going, when they call you a tax and spend liberal, what are you going to say?
Well, you should, first of all, look at my voting record, and somebody just shouted out when I was being introduced, thank you for voting against the defense authorization and defense appropriation bills. I've voted against a lot of spending, but you know, I know that those labels are going to come, and those labels come against people who have stood up to big and powerful interests. And you know, I need to fuel you with all the examples. Sure, the health insurance industry goes after her. She was the one who got young people on, you know, one of the ones who got young people on their parents' insurance. And sure, you know, the war interests go after her because she stood up against Iraq, and she stood. So you know, we're trying to give you the talking points in the field. But yes, they will come after me, and we know in these days post Citizen United decision. You know, I was talking about the cynical voting laws in the state of Wisconsin with voter ID and the redistricting scheme, but Citizens United is a threat to democracy, and we have to make sure that people power prevails over those, you know, fueled by the money. And so call on me, ask for those talking points if you need help responding to the attack ads that we know will come. And let me actually just, I didn't do my usual organizing pitch, go to tammybaldwin.com. Please sign up if you haven't already. Please give me your email address. The caveat is, of course, I'll be asking you for money all the time. These are expensive races. We need to raise money. But I will also be, that's the vehicle for you to hear about the campaign. That's the vehicle to organize, to share the links with others, to grow this organization. And so please do that. Go to Facebook, follow me on Twitter. However you communicate, in addition to that door-to-door and person on the phone. And I actually think I can see our mayor joined us. Welcome, Mayor Barrett. The spot. I was going to say that the spotlights are such that I can only see shadows, but you're so tall. I knew it was you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was going to say, in response to being attacked to spend liberal, you should point out the worst thing, even worse than that, is a spend and not tax to pay for it. Which is exactly
a borrow and spend conservative, right? Well, and I want to, you know, I think there's another important thing that lies between those extremes of, you know, the calling names and, you know, getting growing again is the best way for us to diminish our deficit and pay down our debt. Growth is the #1 strategy. And so I've listened carefully as people have voiced their honest and heartfelt, and I share them, concerns about the scope of our deficit, the scope of our debt. The one thing we don't want to do is jeopardize our opportunity to grow and prosper and flourish again. I talked about my sincere fears about what's happening to the middle class and the shrinking of the American dream. If we are going to compete favorably in a global market, there are 3 key investments that we need to make. Our president said it a year ago at the State of the Union address. To win the future, we need to out-educate, out-innovate, and out-build the rest of the world. You make those 3 investments in our people and our infrastructure, we are going to be in fine shape. So we don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face in all of this.
Growth, however, seems to be contingent on our consumerist, materialistic culture. And we have another looming crisis, and that is the climatal resource depletion crisis that's, let's call it environmental crisis.
Right.
What positions do you advocate that somehow will be able to deal with both of those future threats?
Well, the question concerns the significant threats to our nation because of our current, the way we currently provide power and energy. And I want to say that it's a threefold threat. It's a national security threat when we send so much of our $300 billion a year overseas. It is an economic threat because it's not sustainable. And it is an environmental threat. And we know all 3 of those. And unfortunately, after the midterm elections, it seemed like the issue almost came off the radar screen completely. And it pains me deeply because it's one of those where the more quickly we take action, the more we lessen the ultimate impact of the crisis that we're in right now. In terms, I sit on the Energy Committee, so I was in the middle of the drafting of the climate change bill that passed the House but then failed in the U.S. Senate a couple of years ago. But we have to send clear signals that we're going to do things differently in the future. The easiest things for us to do in any political environment are conservation and efficiency measures. And we can have a much greater dent than we have today just with those simple things. But beyond that, we have to send clear signals of change, of increasing our reliance on renewables and alternatives, domestically produced renewables and alternatives, getting back to education, innovation, and infrastructure. All 3 of them tie into that. All 3 of them. We have the best educated scientists and workforce. Those discoveries will be made here. Those commercializations of new ideas will happen here. A lot of it in Wisconsin. We have a real advantage here in our state on those issues. We ought to be capitalizing on them. There's just no question.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I'm a union Boilermaker.
Thank you.
When Obama stopped when he changed the environmental regulations to allow old coal plants to pollute more heavily, he killed thousands of jobs. And why is it that in the debate, Republicans are allowed to claim that they are on the side of jobs when many times regulations are the only thing that force companies to do the right thing and hire people to do the jobs that need to be done?
Well, and so I want to absolutely underscore what you just said. Eric Cantor, about 3 months ago, put out a memo on his jobs agenda. What was it? Each week, he was going to repeal a regulation that he characterized as a jobs-killing regulation. Almost all of them had to do with clean water or clean air. It was like their jobs agenda, I think somebody editorialized about this. What is their jobs agenda? Polluting. But you point out the very important converse of that is that if we say, all right, you want to update your plant's energy production, its boiler, and you have some choices about how you do that. You can fix the old one, or you can get the latest in, the latest advances that will help keep your neighborhood air and ambient air clean. We want you to do that because there are people like you who are building those boilers that will go into those plants, and that creates jobs. Now, certainly there's part of the economy that whines about it and says, well, we don't want to do those updates or those retrofits or whatever. But we know that it has the dual advantages of cleaning the air and putting people to work and advancing the technology for the future. I just toured, I was just doing a statewide tour, and I was in Rothschild, just south of Wausau, where a paper company is putting in a biomass cogeneration plant. Now, it is a huge win-win-win. It's not coal. It is using the byproduct of the paper-making process, biomass, and it is cogeneration, so it's using the steam and capturing the steam as well as producing electricity. It is putting, right today, in the middle of winter, 70 construction workers to work. By next summer, it'll be 250. The number of jobs that will be permanent to keep the plant up and running is very significant. Also, it is just a win-win-win for all in the area. And so, yeah, those sort of rules, those sort of incentives, whether it's requiring a greater amount of energy to be produced by renewable sources or replacing of old boilers, all of those do produce jobs and good effects for all of us in the environment. Right, go ahead.
The U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and it's ridiculous the number of people, how few got trials, how many are nonviolent offenders, and everything that's going on with the Prison Litigation Reform Act from 1996 and things like that. What are you going to do about mass incarceration in your center?
No, it was a huge issue. It's been a huge issue for a while. I worked on that a lot when I was a member of the state legislature. I was on the corrections committee as a state assembly person, and made it a point when I was chairing the committee to have my committee members tour most of the state facilities to actually sort of, let's walk into one and see what the conditions are like and talk to people at every level, the prison warden, prison guard, and to the extent that you can have conversations with some of the people who are there, sort of get a sense of what is happening. And I served in the state legislature at a time when people were tripping over one another to toughen the state's criminal laws. 3 strikes you're out was the popular, we created, it wasn't enough to have a class A, B, C, and D felony, we had to create an AB felony. Things that were already illegal, we had to make super illegal. It was a crazy, crazy time. And I think it is high time that all of those actions be looked at again. Periodically we should do that and sort of see where they've left us, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I'm a big fan at the very local level of opportunities when somebody is presented in the criminal justice system because of an underlying mental illness or alcohol issue, that we have treatment options as well as incarceration options, but things that keep society safe, as well as enhancing the opportunity that somebody won't be spiraling through the system over and over again. I don't want to say it's not a federal issue. It is a federal issue, but the strongest role in terms of re-examining the way we do things in the criminal justice system is really a state responsibility, because federal criminal laws typically only deal with, cross-state border or federal facilities like military bases or Indian reservations and other other areas where there's more of a federal jurisdiction. So it's something we really have to join hands with localities and state to make a real difference. But I think we need to look at what we've done and re-examine it.
There's a lot of federal funding for like the war on drugs, for example, which is behind a lot of mass incarceration.
That's for sure.
So there are federal.
No, I don't want to suggest that there's not a federal role. In terms of putting the criminal laws on the books, it's largely a state role. But yes, there have been incentives over time for where the federal government has acted and said to the states, we expect you all to do this, that, or the other thing in order to get certain federal funds. And as you mentioned, there are, you know, the drug policy is often something that has emanated from the federal level. So.
And we know what Tommy Thompson did for that. Tommy Thompson is quite the record when it comes to our incarceration rate.
I'm very familiar with that. Well, thank you. So, oh, there's still more. Okay, you get the last question.
Within the Healthcare Reform Act, what aspects might you advocate for, and how do you see that changing the traditional way that healthcare is delivered?
So the question was, in the Healthcare Reform Act, sort of what do I see as the highlights, but how do I think it'll change things as it's fully implemented? Is that a good?
Yeah,
okay,
so
well, I certainly mentioned two of them that I'm very proud of. The provisions that prevent insurance companies from discriminating against people who have pre-existing health conditions. We started with children, soon that will be adults. We will get rid of the time when people couldn't buy health insurance at any price because of a pre-existing condition. But you know, as we see this fully implemented, I think that the broken system that we've known most of our lives will start being reined in a bit. I mean, I talked to small businesses who would talk over the last decade about double-digit increases in their premiums each year. Unbelievable sort of curve if you look at it. And I think that state-based insurance exchanges are really going to rein that in. And for the first time, people who, because their employer doesn't offer insurance or because they're not in the job market right now, maybe in school, maybe part-time, raising families, whatever, for the first time, there's going to be absolute affordable coverage for them. But there's also some other important things that I feel excited about in the law, and I want to tell you how we can improve it, even though you didn't ask that. We have a single payer program for our seniors called Medicare. And we know that in order to make sure that safety net remains strong for years to come, that we need to drive reform through that program. And I'm very excited about some of the initiatives that are in the Affordable Care Act that will, I believe, significantly improve quality for our seniors, but will end up benefiting all of us, because once people take notice that Medicare is going to pay a certain new way, it's going to drive the quality not just for the seniors who are served, but for everybody. In terms of how I'd improve it, I fought vociferously until the 11th hour of the 11th day on a public option. And I think we need a public option. I used to brag on Wisconsin when I was making that argument. We have, in Medicare, there's a program called Medicare Part D, which is the prescription drug coverage. That, I keep reminding the Republicans, you guys set up that as a state-based insurance exchange. The thing that you're so deriding in the Affordable Care Act is that we're going to have state-based insurance exchanges for our health insurance. Well, they set up the Medicare Part D benefit, the insurance, prescription drug insurance, as a state-based exchange. Wisconsin is the only state in the country that has a public option competing side by side the private insurances in prescription drugs. It's called senior care. Does that sound familiar to people? This wildly popular public option where it's kept prices low for about 95% of the seniors in this state. It is a better option than the private options. But I remember when we were talking about the public option, everyone kept saying, well, you have the public option, it'll drive all the private competitors out of business. We have 40 private sector options in prescription drug insurance for our seniors in the state. It has not driven the private sector out. They're there, you know, competing also. So I think that we can improve upon what was already done in the future, and I will certainly be fighting to add a public option into the choices that American citizens and Wisconsin citizens have. I would be honored to have our mayor come and join us and say a few words, and it's so great to have you here.
Well, good afternoon. I just wanted to stop by for my friend Tammy. Tammy and I served in Congress together, and she is absolutely the real deal when it comes to progressivism and in intelligent decision making. And we served together for about 4 years. I have to say, I think she was happy when I left Congress because it allowed her to get my seat on the Commerce Committee. So that's how it works. It's always, God bless you, leave, I want your seat. So, and I was happy to have her get that seat. But I think we all recognize what a competitive race this is going to be. And the one thing we have going for us right now is on the other side, you've got 3 or 4 people who are aiming at each other. And I think we should encourage a lively dialogue on the other side as well. And ask them to point out each other's shortcomings because they are plentiful to do that. But this is going to be a challenging race, and I think we all have to do everything we can to make sure that she does get elected, because the balance of power in the Senate is precarious, to say the least, right now. There are a number of seats around the country that are being held by Democrats that could very easily swing to the Republicans, and this is a real concern. And this is one of the seats that both parties are putting their sights on. So again, she is a phenomenal legislator, she is a phenomenal person, and I think you'll see over the next 10 months she's a phenomenal campaigner as well. So again, I just wanted to stop by. I spent this morning at a couple of churches in the Central City. I just did a Martin Luther King event down at the PAC, and I knew if I went home that I'd have some work to do before the Packer game started. So I thought, I'm not going home, I'm coming here. So I just wanted to stop by for Tammy, and thank you all for being here, and I hope you all support her. Thank you very much.
Three quick things before we break off and filter off to the Packer game. Number one, how many of you are Grassroots North Shore members? Show of hands. Okay, those of you who are not, who would like to see more of this and get to see more of this, we have a sign-up sheet over here to get on an email list. We're looking to eventually form a Grassroots Eastside chapter. So let's see, Darcy, raise your hand. Nope. Let's see, Karen, Dean? Okay, left. Okay, so anyway, someone over the table, raise your hand. Come over and sign up. Number 2, I want to remind you that the Walker Group is going to be having a kind of a support Scott Walker rally at Hart Park on Saturday. Let's see if we can outnumber them 3 to 1. It's going to be at noon. Check the Grassroots North Shore website, grassrootsnorthshore.org website. And we'd like to have you all come out. Number 3, I hope you can join the happy throngs going out to Madison on Tuesday to drop off what we may think may be close to 1 million signatures, okay?
Also, if anyone needs it, I've got information on voter ID. It is critically important we get people their IDs and register.
That's right.
I've got information here from the city.
Yeah, the other thing that we're going to be doing, that Grassroots North Shore is going to be doing while we're in the eye of the hurricane, is we're going to be working voter ID. So it's also important you sign up, because we need a lot of people to get a lot of people signed up. Okay, anyhow. What?
On Tuesday, when I'm going to Madison, come to MATC at 4:30 to 6. There's going to be a parallel
All right, so for those of us that are going to not make it to Madison, because some people are actually working and doing other things, there will be a parallel celebration here, celebration recall challenge here. It will be at MATC downtown on 7th and State. If the weather is inclement, I'm told we're going to be able to go inside. So that will start at 4:30. It'll run from about 4:30 to 6. We're going to be highlighting some issues. We're also going to be doing some big congratulations. I know everybody here probably went out and got signatures, but we have people in the 1,000 Club and the 500 Club, etc.
Yeah. And one more thing before we get back to David. Again, nice round of applause for Congresswoman Tammy Baldwin and Mayor Tom Barrett. Thing I like is Tammy not only has thick skin, but I think her skin goes all the way to the bone, and that's exactly the type of candidate that we need to beat the four dwarfs or whoever they're going to run. So, for those of you who like parties, we're going to David Weingrad is going to tell you about one more party this afternoon.
And the last invitation today, starting around 3 or whenever the Packer game begins, over at the Irish Pub, 140 North Water. We're going to be having a recall celebration Packer party. So come and join us. That's with We Are Milwaukee, We Are Wisconsin group. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, drink up. See ya.